So I'd like to discuss a little situation we had developed in the R44. We ended up with stuck pedals on the R44 and had to declare an emergency and come back into the airport and land. What had happened, we took off from the airport. I had a student on board, actually two students, one in the back seat and one was flying right seat, I was flying left seat. We departed out of Cape Girardeau Airport here and flew for a period of about 12 to 15 minutes or so. And I had mentioned something to the student about, hey, you're slightly out of trim. And he replied, well, are the pedals always this hard to push? And so I took command of the aircraft and pedals were stuck. They were not moving. You couldn't move them left or right. And then, as luck would have it, they were stuck essentially in the neutral position, which is fairly easy to deal with actually. So at that point we returned back to the airport, turned around, called the airport, declared an emergency and said, I've got a set of stuck pedals, I'm going to have to come in and land the aircraft. As luck would have it, runway 2 was closed because of ice accumulation. However, that was actually an advantage, so planning on doing a run-on onto the runway, and the fact that there was ice on the runway actually made it easier. So anyway, they rolled emergency and ambulance, fire truck, and everything waiting on us when we got back. But the actual landing was actually pretty straightforward. Ended up, when you lower the collective, we'd get a little bit of a left yaw to the aircraft, so I just rolled in a teeny bit of right, overrode the governor just a bit for a percent or two, rolled in a little bit of right throttle, which then brings your nose back to the right, and slid it on going about 25 knots, and it held pretty straight up to about the last 50 or 60 feet. It yawed just a little bit to the left, and I just let it yaw. I didn't roll the throttle up anymore to check it, and the aircraft came to a stop, and pretty much an uneventful landing. So here I'll show you a video of that. I took a quick video of it after we got out. It was freezing cold. It was only 9 degrees on the ground here yesterday. It was pretty darn cold. All right, so made the landing, slid it on. Couldn't come down very aggressively with the collective at all because it would pitch left. So rolled a little throttle in, kept it relatively straight, and got her to a stop. And so far so good. We'll figure out what the hell got the pedal stuck, and hopefully get on the way here again. Here we are. I'm about to freeze my ass off. So I had stuck pedals on the helicopter, so I had to slide it on the runway. I'll figure out what the shit got the pedal stuck here. Came out okay. Started straight, ended up like that. So I apologize for the pretty poor audio. The wind was blowing pretty good, but what I'd like to get to here pretty shortly is actually what caused the pedals to stick, because if you fly R44, you need to be aware of this. It's a pretty unusual event, but we'll get to that here next. At this point, the aircraft's out on the runway, so we had to tow it in. Luckily, we've got a special tow bar that hooks onto the front, that has wheels on it, hooks onto the front part of the skids, and put it up on the wheels for the back wheels, and then towed it in with the pickup truck. And I got it back to the hangar here. So we'll start out here at the hangar and I'll show you exactly what we found. So when we got the aircraft back to the hangar, we started looking at we started from the pedals themselves and traced it all the way back here to the tail rotor. Found absolutely nothing until we arrived here at the tail rotor, and so I'm gonna kind of show you guys here. So here, when you push the pedal on for the tail rotor, you'll notice that this assembly here that works sort of like a swash plate goes back and forth and causes the pitch change in the tail rotor. So this slider here, the slider assembly slides up and down on this shaft here. So I'll just work that back and forth and let you see how that works there. And what we found was this thing was stuck right here. And what had happened was moisture had accumulated between the shaft here and down the slider section. And so we ended up putting a heat gun on it, in relatively short order was able to thaw out the moisture here, the ice that had the slider locked up. We then took an air hose and blew in from the ends, and you could see moisture came out here at the end of the shaft. We had several drops of moisture came out. So we spent 45 minutes or so with the heat gun just trying to cook all the moisture out, blowing it out with the hose and that sort of thing. But what had happened was, like I say, the moisture had gotten into in between the shaft here and the slider, and had locked that thing up. I mean, it was not going to budge. It wouldn't budge at all. So what had happened the day before, we pushed the aircraft out, was going to fly it, and then it began to rain. So we just thought, well, we'll let this little cell go by, and we'll go eat lunch. And so we're gone for about an hour and a half eating lunch. Came back, and as luck would have it, the sail kind of intensified, so we thought, what the hell, we'll scrap it for today. And we just pulled the aircraft back into the hangar. Temperatures were probably about in the neighborhood of about 40 degrees, right? And we didn't even fly the aircraft, so how it wicked into there and got in between the slider and the shaft is a bit of a mystery. But anyway, so the next morning, when we decided to, or when we got the aircraft out, it was about 9 degrees. It was really cold. So we got the aircraft out, and our heated hangar, we keep it about 55 degrees or so inside the the hangar here. And so after we got it out and we fired it up, started nicely, picked it up to hover, everything was working correctly, and we departed. And again, once we got about 10 or 15 minutes away from Cape Dorado, the pedals were just totally locked up. I mean, they would not budge at all. So, and that's what we found. Never seen it before. As soon as we found it, I ended up calling Tim Tucker and asked him about it, and he said that he'd never heard of that happening before. And you know, they operate these things in some really cold weather in Russia and other places. So it's very surprising that it hasn't happened at all. Ended up talking to Daniel Huska with Robinson. He said the same thing. He'd never heard of that actually happening either. So a bit of a mystery, but something to think about if your aircraft's going to be sitting out in the rain, which, you know, sometimes they sit out in the rain fairly infrequently, but they'll sit out in the rain. We've never incurred any kind of problem with them at all. But if it sits out in the rain one day and the next day the temperatures are really cold down in, you know, near zero, it's something to think about. You might want to make sure after the aircraft sits out there for a while that the darn slider will actually work and slide up and down on the shaft, and that you won't end up with stuck pedals as we did. So a bit of a mystery, and it's got to be a highly unusual event, but at least you're aware of it now. So this was an aircraft incident, not accident. We didn't damage anything, it was just an incident. But since it involved malfunction of the flight controls, that makes it an automatic or immediate reporting to the NTSB. If you look at NTSB 830, and it's actually subpart B on here, I'll just show you real quick here. Under here it shows issues that can be an immediate notification. And an aircraft accident or any of the following listed serious incidents occur. Number 1, flight control system malfunction or failure. So since that, consider that basically a flight control system malfunction or failure, we went ahead and notified the NTSB. And if you look on this website, it's the NTSB's website, right down here it lists an 800 or an 844 number, 844-373-9922. So we ended up just giving them a call. We actually talked to Dan Reed with the FAA, told him what had happened, and he had advised that, you know, since it did involve the flight controls, it should be a mandatory immediate reporting. So anyway, we contacted the NTSB, made a report, and they basically said if they needed any additional information, they'd contact us again. But that was pretty straightforward. I bring it up because, you know, if you have any problems with an aircraft incident or accident, obviously you want to report to the nth degree. I'd rather over-report a situation than under-report it, just so that you got all your bases covered. In fact, Dean made a logbook entry in the aircraft logbook, what we had found, what we did to address the situation as far as chasing all the moisture out of there, and so. Anyway, just a good idea. If you have any problems with the aircraft, you might want to be sure to notify the FAA and the NTSB, and just make sure you got all your bases covered. So, well, I hope you got something out of this. It's a very unusual occurrence, and hopefully it doesn't ever happen again to anyone, but something to think about. And Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys in the next video.